process of building the most ambitious water storage and power-producing project ever undertaken by a county. Here to explain the purpose of the Middle Fork American River Project and introduce agency members is Board Chairman Frank Paoli.
The Board of Directors of your Placer County Water Agency takes pleasure in making available the information contained in the film you're about to see concerning the activities on the Middle Fork American River Project now under construction. May I introduce the members of the Placer County Water Agency. On my left, George Lambert, representing the 1st District. William Briner, representing the 5th District. And on my right, Will Jones, representing the 3rd District, and Bob Radovich, representing the 2nd District and Secretary of the agency. Also, may I introduce Mr. John H. Bernard, the County Water Agency's General Manager. We have received many outstanding compliments about the Middle Fork project and how it is being financed through revenue bonds without any local, state, or federal tax monies. It is rapidly becoming known throughout America and the world as a model of what people in a local area working together can accomplish on their own. This tremendous project, being built at a total cost of $115 million, has been secured because you, the people of Placer County, have through determination and farsightedness given you overwhelming support to conserving the natural resources of our county and building towards the future. So let us look now at the progress report for the construction years 1964-1965.
Major water storage area in the Middle Fork American River Project is at French Meadows, a broad valley through which the American River flows. This became the site of a giant earth-filled dam. Special dedication ceremonies were held in the heavily timbered valley in 1963. Less than 2 years later, the French Meadows Dam arose to span the valley. When the 1964 construction season began, the task of moving more than 500,000 cubic yards of material, much of it granite, was begun in earnest. Men using giant earth-moving machinery sliced out a rock foundation for the base of the French Meadows Dam. Men worked often on a double-shift basis to create the proper connection for the earth-filled dam which would rise here. The bedrock must be completely sealed. Workmen chipped away, smoothed the area, cleaned out all debris, then filled all cracks and crevices with dental concrete. This concrete, manufactured right at the mile-high elevation of French Meadows, ensures that no water can seep beneath the dam. Much of this process is accomplished with hand trowels, a marked contrast to the gigantic machinery which would be called upon later to finish the job. The area for the French Meadows Dam was cleared during 1963, and when the 1964 construction season opened, an army of workmen built to completion French Meadows Dam by the winter rainy season. One job which continued year-round was tunneling. 24 miles of tunnel, much of it in excess of 10 feet in diameter, laces the Middle Fork project. This tunnel, partially concrete lined, carries water downhill from Duncan Creek to storage at the mile-high French Meadows Reservoir. A diversion dam at Duncan Creek and this tunnel were completed in September 1964. These men dug through sheer granite while winter storms raged outside. Then, as spring and summer came on, they chipped away at the loose rock and completed the shoring up where necessary. The process of moving 4 million cubic yards of material, much of it very specialized material necessary for the dam, is not easy. The structure, earth and gravel fill, was to be a half-mile long and rise 200 feet above the valley floor. Massive equipment scooped huge buckets full of earth from borrow areas, and a fleet of trucks was kept running continually. At the dam's spillway, 350,000 cubic yards were lifted, At peak times, 5 mechanical shovels and front-end loaders were called upon to do the job. Some of the larger vehicles carried away loads of up to 35 cubic yards at a single haul. These men and their equipment were working against a deadline, one imposed by the nature of winter at this elevation. They were to complete the dam by winter. At peak times during the summer of 1964, more than 2,000 men were at work on the Middle Fork project. These men rated an average of $2 million monthly in their payroll, making it the largest single payroll in Placer County. Gradually, the huge mound that would form the dam took shape. Its height would create a reservoir of 1,500 acres, a pool containing 41 billion gallons of water. The water surface and 9 miles of shoreline create an important side benefit, recreation. The reservoir will be ideal for camping, fishing, boating, and swimming. Most of the men necessary to carry out an undertaking such as this lived in the sprawling camps and trailer houses at the job location. Dining halls, sewage treatment plants, and medical facilities were built to accommodate them near their work sites. The dam was virtually complete when in late October the first rain and snowstorms hit the area. Hampered somewhat by the weather, the contractor continued placing impervious core and fill material and completed the job in December. Thus, this complex of the project has the capacity for storing water which can be released at will on its first tunnel trip toward power-producing facilities. This is water which will eventually produce the power to pay for the project. A few miles southeast of French Meadows and connected by tunnel is Hellhole, a cavernous area through which the Rubicon River flows south and west. Scenic Hellhole is easily the most remote place in the complex. To even reach this place with men and equipment, entirely new roads had to be hewn from the previous mountainside jeep trails. In 1963, the hole began to get the treatment by a handful of workmen who returned in greater numbers. These workmen found a canyon with steep rocky walls on either side, a natural place for construction of a 400-foot high dam, a place to build the largest reservoir in the project. Workmen began in 1964 to reach down to bedrock to create a place for the dam and construct a site for the largest power plant in the Middle Fork project, one which would produce half of the project's power. Much of the granite to be used in the big Hellhole Dam was readily available. Conveyor systems were used to help in moving the 8 million cubic yards needed to comprise the dam. High-pressure monitors were used to clean out the smaller unclean material being dumped at the dam site. Early in 1964, a coffer dam and diversion tunnel were constructed at Hellhole to divert the flow of the Rubicon River around the site of the dam. By October, the dam had been pushed upward to a height of 200 feet above the riverbed, or about half of its eventual height. The dam, with a crest length of 1,600 feet, will store water from the Rubicon watershed, along with the inflow from the French Meadows complex. Its operating volume will be 41 billion gallons of water. Leading away to the west from Hellhole is Middle Fork Tunnel, more than 10 miles in length. Along its route, it pauses to pick up valuable power-producing water from comparatively small diversion dams. The tunnels were nearly three-quarters completed during 1964. Several miles to the west of Hellhole is Oxbow. Here will be the site of the last of 4 power production plants along the project. Some of the water here will have been channeled downhill 4,000 feet. At this point, the water is moved through tunnels, reservoirs, penstocks, power plants, and natural river channels, and is returned to the American River to flow onward, still in Placer County. Through 1964, the various stages of the multi-slabbed concrete powerhouse structure were added. By September, the first stage had been completed. To complete the task, thousands of buckets of concrete, manufactured a short distance away, had been poured into the forms. Working in a confined area such as that at the Oxbow powerhouse required highly specialized tools and skill. Providing the plants necessary to produce concrete for the job is a major logistics problem in itself. At the end of spring 1964, a concrete aggregate plant which had done its work at Oxbow was dismantled and moved to Hellhole to begin a similar task there. 2, the job of cleaning the face of the mountainside, the bedrock of the Sierra, is an important one, for it is here permanent facilities will be constructed, facilities which will enable the project to do its work far into the future. During the 1964 season, workmen completed the shell of the powerhouse. All that remains to complete the important task is the installation of the custom-made power-producing equipment. This material began arriving at the project late in 1964. Water reaching this point in the project will have left Hellhole, traveled through the Middle Fork Tunnel, then dropped through a nearly 2,000-foot penstock and the Middle Fork Power Plant. From that point, Interbay Dam, the water is pushed through the 7-mile Ralston Tunnel, another power plant, Ralston Afterbay, and finally a short tunnel to wind up here at Oxbow on the American River. The valuable product of those power plants sold under an already existing contract with Pacific Gas and Electric Company pay for the project. With the exception of the Oxbow Tunnel already complete, most of these lower-level facilities are earmarked for later completion in the overall timetable for the Middle Fork project, but these are on time within the construction schedule. The water flows on toward Auburn in the American River Channel. This water moves through the channel to a point near Auburn, where a pumping plant will lift it into a horseshoe-shaped tunnel. This water is destined for marketing in the drier western portion of Placer County. The work underway in the canyon here now has no connection with the proposed Auburn Dam and Folsom South Canal. That would be a federal project. Another important difference, that one would cost $430 million. The one undertaken by the Placer County Water Agency bears no cost to the taxpayer. Early in 1965, the necessary tunnel and the pumping plant near Auburn were both about 50% complete. The pumping plant constructed here will be capable of lifting 22,000 gallons of water each minute over a 200-foot head. This opens the door to effective use of this water for those who need it in the western part of Placer County. The tunnel through which the water will flow is being constructed beneath the ridge on which Auburn is built. 3 miles in length, it will allow water to flow by gravity to Auburn Ravine. The storms which struck Northern California and the Middle Fork project in late December 1964 brought record amounts of rainfall. The rampaging rivers of California overflowed their banks and did millions of dollars damage. French Meadows Dam was essentially complete when the extreme storm conditions of late December began. In the last 5 days of the year, 4 feet of snow fell, and work on the project was forced almost to a complete halt. The intensity of the storm was such that the dam in the first weeks of the new year stored 75,000 acre-feet of water. The heavy snow prevented workmen from even reaching their equipment. Entire trucks were covered with snow. There were scenes such as this all over the project itself. The storm wiped out roads over much of the area, making the various project facilities inaccessible except by helicopter. Until the snows melted later in the winter, the contractor was unable to determine the extent of the storm damage to his equipment. However, the French Meadows Dam had been completed in time to store an enormous amount of water. Without the dam, the water would have rushed off downhill, its power-producing potential lost forever. The French Meadows camp was covered with the heavy snows, and workmen were forced to wait it out inside. As the heavy storms receded, work began to resume on a limited basis. At French Meadows, the finishing touches were applied to the spillway. Some additional rock fill was placed at French Meadows Dam during the month of January. Actually, the damage here was small when compared with other storm and weather problems on the Middle Fork project. A breach in the partially completed Hellhole Dam on December 23rd resulted in a discharge of 30,000 acre-feet of water. The torrential rains had formed a lake behind rock shell at the dam, and it poured through. A rapid rise on the Rubicon and American rivers downstream resulted in the loss of 5 bridges on the river. A few days later, the enormity of the loss could be seen from the air. As was the case in much of Northern California, the record flows recorded in December of 1964 far exceeded past peaks. When the monsoon-like rain struck the Hellhole area, they washed away not only considerable stockpiled material, which would have been later placed in the dam, but 700,000 cubic yards of rock from the partially completed first stage of dumped rock fill. The breach of the center of the first stage of the high dam left a gaping hole. An engineering consulting board moved into the area to investigate the causes, help estimate the damage, and set guidelines for reconstruction of Hellhole Dam. Damage to the roads leading into Hellhole was extreme. These roads had been built less than 2 years before, and the intensity of the storm and runoff cut off Hellhole from the outside. At Hellhole itself, equipment was lost under snow or washed away by the force of the water. Downstream at the other major facilities, there was additional damage, though not as severe as that at Hellhole. Excavations for the Middle Fork and the Ralston powerhouses were filled with mud and debris. The equipment necessary to resume full-scale operations at the end of winter was severely damaged. Entire conveyor systems and plants were washed away where they lay in the path of the rampaging water. What was left behind, often partially buried, certainly disfigured, bore mute testimony to the scope of controlling the water in this watershed. This equipment would have to be replaced in order to assure the project would move ahead on schedule. With the storm moving from intense rain to snow and much of the water being held in that form, the flow of the rivers declined during the first days of 1965. Efforts were made to assess the damage. 2,700 feet of roadway washed out near the Ralston powerhouse. 60,000 cubic yards of already processed materials washed away at Oxbow. The excavation for the Afterbay Dam foundation filled with gravel. Large fabricated metal pieces washed away and lost. A battered crane at Oxbow was knocked askew by the rush of the floodwaters. Much of this equipment and the tools used in a project of this scope will of course be left as they were by the flood. They will be replaced as the work of rebuilding and new construction continues in the 1965 construction year. The most obvious problem to observers was that of rebuilding the roads to make the Middle Fork project readily accessible again. After that, removal of vast amounts of debris which the water had brought with it and left behind. At the lower elevations in the project, these tasks could be begun almost at once since the snow cover did not offer the obstacle it did at higher elevations. All in all, the setbacks suffered in the December 1964 floods did not deter optimism that future construction deadlines will be met. As soon as weather permitted, officials of the various groups involved went out into the field to check the damage and chart plans for the future. These men together planned a course for 1965 and the years to come in construction of the Middle Fork project. Meanwhile, an engineering consulting board established by the agency began gathering material for a report on how best to complete Hellhole Dam in a safe, timely, and economical manner. During January, the weather improved and the snow cover gradually disappeared from the dam site. Mobilized equipment moved in to replace the snow and began the cleanup work. After careful study, the Engineering Consulting Board concluded that the basic design and specifications of Hellhole Dam should not be altered. The rock-filled coffer dam, which existed at the time of the flood, was not built to withstand that tremendous surge of water. It was only a supporting face for impervious earth, which would have shut out virtually all water. The Placer County Water Agency and the contractor agreed that all efforts should be directed toward completing the Hellhole complex, including the towering dam, by the fall of 1965. They began to bend every effort in that direction. As men and machinery began to set about the task ahead, it was agreed that several times during the construction year, progress would be reviewed by engineers and the agency. This would be done with an eye to having Hellhole Dam in a position of stemming the Rubicon River in the remote event of another record storm next winter. The board noted that Hellhole Dam, to be completed by late fall of 1965, will require substantially augmented construction plant facilities and manpower. The contractor will have to place 700,000 cubic yards more downstream rockfill than had been planned for 1965, and it will have to be accomplished in 2 months less time. The board concluded that what remained of the dam structure itself was little damaged by the impact of the flood. However, a blueprint for construction of the facility was outlined in detail. The force of the water during the storm resulted in a great scatteration of rockfill material. As part of the cleanup process, these materials were returned to the proper place in the dam or moved away from the site. Exact plans were spelled out for the cleaning of material which would be placed in the dam during 1965. This included sluicing much of the rockfill material to clean away unnecessary dirt and fine particles. So early in the year, water began flowing from the high-pressure monitors which had been used to place the rockfill in Hellhole Dam the previous year. Trucks carrying the material to the dam from nearby quarries dump their loads, and the smaller unacceptable material is cleaned out simultaneously. These men are following a blueprint for rebuilding the Hellhole Dam. In a way, man is attempting to equate his efforts in rebuilding the ravages left by nature, attempting to control, for his ultimate benefit, the forces of nature. Using the right and left abutments of the dam which remained after the flood, the task of raising the midsection was begun. Generally speaking, the larger rock, much of it more than a cubic yard in size, was dumped on the downstream face. The smaller size material was placed on the upstream face. At any rate, it must be properly cleaned. The important filter layers in the dam downstream suffered significant damage. 31,000 cubic yards of processed aggregate had been placed before the floods, and a good portion of this was washed away. Workmen moved in following the storm to clean off the contaminated top layer of what remained. After the top layer was removed, a small army of workers used their familiar equipment to place down layer after layer of filter zone material, and then it was thoroughly compacted. Of all the debris which remained in the main channel of the Rubicon River at Hellhole Dam, much of it could remain. The rushing of the water at high velocity through the channel washed the rock clean for the most part. However, it was necessary to remove the rock upstream from the toe of the dam all the way down to bedrock. Thus, in some cases, it was necessary to undo the work of last year before the task of rebuilding could begin. The random deposit pattern of rock and other material did make a rearrangement and compaction at the base of the dam. This work was begun in January. With the determination made to push for completion of Hellhole Dam and the complex of facilities around it by November 65, a sharp increase in numbers of workmen and equipment was necessary. Even before the snows had completely disappeared from the mile-high area, plans were laid and the reconstruction job was begun. Several stages and steps were outlined, and the contractor set out to coordinate these with a prearranged time plan for 1965. All of this required quick rebuilding of roadways into the area, an increase in logistic support for men and equipment in what was 2 years ago a virtually inaccessible area. The intensity of the storm had returned Hellhole to virtually the same inaccessible status, but it did not take long to make the area reachable by vehicle. But it will take long days plus double work shifts to lift up the dam to the point where it will store water necessary for the project. All concerned with the project have dedicated themselves to completing the work needed in this area on schedule. While the major effort at reconstruction was, of course, at Hellhole, the cleanup work on other facets of the project continued into spring. The vigor with which these efforts were undertaken underlined the faith that the people of Placer County showed when they approved the revenue bond issue to make all this possible. Long-range engineering studies had shown the feasibility of the project, and the issue was submitted to the voters of Placer County in 1961. They approved the issuance of revenue bonds for the project by an overwhelming 25-1 margin. The $115 million American River project will pay for itself many times over. First, the money for electrical power produced in the county will pay those who financed the building of the project. Following that, the money will accrue to the general fund of Placer County, benefiting those who reside in the county. Thus, Placer County, through its water agency, is carrying through to completion by summer of 1967 the most ambitious project ever undertaken by a single county. Under the plans of the agency, the water which ran through the county will now be used for practical purposes, for power production, industrial and domestic uses, irrigation, and recreation. Long after the skilled construction men have completed the task of building the Middle Fork project, the Placer County Water Agency, for the people of the county, will continue to harvest one of life's essential commodities, water, for the people, forever. Now, here is Placer County Water Agency Board Chairman Frank Paoli.
You have just seen the tremendous work involved in building your Placer County Water Agency project. This is your county at work, but more is coming. Already your water agency has instructed its engineers and legal staff to intensify its search for new supplies of water to satisfy the ever-growing future needs of Placer County's people. Possible additional projects at Giant Gap, Lake Valley, Clover Valley, and Coon Creek are some of the steps we are now taking to accomplish this purpose and preserve our own water. The task before us is great, but we know that the people of Placer County are more than equal to the job.